in honor of my grandmother Szifra, whom I'm named after. All of the people I'm going to mention to you have died in virtually the same horrific way. All of them perished. And I say that word, but I mean, you know they were murdered. It's for my other grandmother, Rachel in English, my grandfather, Laser. My other grandfather had died previously. I had uncles. I had an uncle, my mother's older brother, Moshe Aaron, who gets mentioned in a certain way in the film. I had an aunt who was my mother's younger sister. Her name is Lucia. My father had 4 younger sisters. The oldest was Toba. The second one was Szifra. He had a sister, Yechovit, and a youngest sister, Gela. All of them perished. I tell this story because I most want out of this evening that if you encounter injustice, large or small, from bullying to denial of the Cambodian experience, the Armenian experience, the Jewish Holocaust, tomorrow or 20 years from now, what I really hope is that you will be able to say, I met a woman whose family were all murdered. What I hope is that you will find a way to be brave in the face of the injustices, small or large. I do want to say that there are a couple of there are several actually, tough images that you'll encounter, Holocaust images amongst the stories and the humor and the drama.
I think it would be hard to visualize just how many items were on this stairway. We were talking about a half truckload that wholesalers would come and buy, and my father would just drop the whole box and it would just splatter, and the clothes would come flying out. What you would have is this long stairway that was just completely covered with clothing. So we didn't do things like go to the park in the winter necessarily and sled, but what we did do was somersault or slide down this chute, if you will, of jackets and coats and pants and all colors and textures, and it was awesome, the slide game that we did before the wholesaler arrived. They never saw us do this to their precious clothing.
We knew what Hitler was going to do, so we all fled in cattle trains. Took 6 weeks to go because the trains were half broken, and no bathrooms and no toilets and no nothing. The thing stopped every so often, and everybody ran outside to go to to relieve themselves.
I know that I couldn't have come through the level of trauma and loss that she had and come through with the joy and the hope and the optimism that my mother has, because she continues at age almost 74, after all of her life, to still be vibrant, joyful, upbeat, caring, loving person. And to me, that's a miracle.
We've all had our moments here of just being a little bit overwhelmed by the situation and just having to step back, take a break, walk outside, do something, get out of here, because I have a feeling he lives right in these piles. I feel like I'm sitting on Nathan right now. The spirit of Nathan definitely lives in this building.
I flipped between Dad, my father, and Nathan because he didn't like being called Dad. He says, call me Nathan, my name's Nathan. So I said, okay, we'll call you Nathan. And working in the store, it was easier actually to call him Nathan. I had a very intense relationship with my father. I loved him very much, and I also had incredible disdain for the way he treated people and his level of intolerance. Whatever differences that there were, again, were coupled with my clear understanding that this was a complicated man who had an incredibly complicated history, and I don't know that I would have done even as good a job getting through if I'd had to endure the level of trauma that he had.
Only at Birke's.
Dressed at Birke's.
Shop at Birke's.
We discovered Birke's.
The Birke story.
Likey store.
Birke's in downtown Lowell.
You'd come in the store and, you'd be looking around. Sally would come right over. She knew my size. She'd say, oh, I know, I got one just for you. And she says, I know you like this color. I know you don't like the dark ones like this or whatever. And she'd take it out and I'd try it on, and everything was the way you wanted it. You left here, you were satisfied, and then when you went out, you felt good about yourself. So.
He was a very, very fair man. He wasn't prejudiced against anyone. When he was having one of his days, he hated everyone equally.
That's the kind of place it was. I mean, you came in and you were family.
Although I've been buying items from him for 46 years, he never quite recognized me.
They knew who you were. They knew what size you wore. They knew what colors you liked.
I quit smoking approximately 10 years ago, and I put on 60 pounds, 55. So I came in here a few years ago with the new weight on, and I walked in, and he was having one of his grumpy days, I guess you'd call them.
It was more than just a place to shop. It was, I don't explain it. It was like going in your closet. You knew what you had there. You knew you were going to find what you were looking for, I guess.
And he says, we don't have anything you want. I said, what do you mean? I haven't even looked. He said, we don't have too many things for short, fat guys, he says.
When Hitler came, there was a curfew, 5 o'clock. So he brought him in, and he started to talk, and it was after 5 o'clock. He says, Nathan, you can't go home now. So he came in, and he had a cup of coffee, and I was sitting down. I don't know if I was reading a book or the paper, whatever. And I got up, and my mother says to me, you want a cup of coffee too? I says, yeah. And he says, who is that? And my father said, that's my daughter. He says, I didn't know you have a daughter.
You could only spend so much time upstairs, and if you were upstairs too long, you knew that he would want to know what was going on. You really couldn't browse around the store. You had to know what you wanted, go in, get it, and leave. And I have lots of friends who, as adults, shop at Birke's and have always felt as though they're very intimidated by Nathan.
In 1939, when Hitler started to take the boys to work, my mother used to say to my brother, you run away. Hitler's going to take you, and they're going to take you away. In that time, the Russian border was open. So he ran away. But when he ran away, my mother couldn't stand it. She was crying day and night. So I said to my mother, I'm going to go and bring him back. Whatever's going to happen. Well, that time Hitler wasn't as bad. I says, whatever's going to happen, it's going to happen to all of us. You're not going to die because you were so lonesome for him. So Nathan was there. Nathan says, I'm going too. If you want to come, we're both going to go. So my mother says, yeah, that's a good idea, because he was 13 years older. He was like almost, and years ago in Europe, when I'm 18 and he's 31, it was a big difference. So we ran away, and I went to that city where I know my brother was supposed, he wasn't there anymore. And we couldn't find him. So we were staying there, and all of a sudden the border closed, and we couldn't go back.
My father and I had just come back from the factory and loaded this no-back seat with navy blue blazers from floor to the ceiling. All navy blue men's blazers. Hundreds of blazers. And this man came in during the time we had really almost finished unloading these mega amount of navy blue blazers and said, I'd like a navy blue blazer. And my father said, in his inimitable way, has to be navy? And the man said, yes, I'm looking for a navy blue blazer. He says, we have none for you. And the man looked. I mean, he could see them. Hundreds of navy blue blazers. I was, of course, totally mortified, which happened on a regular, daily basis working with my father. And within seconds, my father says, customers like you, I'm telling you where you should go. Go to Martin's, because they like to wait on you. If you want blue, they'll give you blue. You want gray, they give you gray, brown, anything you want, blue, polka dots, anything you want. My store, you come in, you need something specific, you're not a customer for me. And that was the end.
Then all of a sudden we found out that the Germans going to start to attack Russia. So one thing about Nathan, he had a big, good vision. He knew what's going to happen next. So he went over to the embassy and he says, I want to evacuate myself to Russia, to Chelyabinsk, the coal mines. And he put my name down too. So when he came back, he says, we're going to Chelyabinsk because the Germans going to come down here. And he says, the first thing he's going to kill is the one ran away from Poland. So I says, I'm not going to go. We're not even married. How can I go? He says, well, let's get married. And that's how we got married.
And Mr. Trivers would come by and say, oh, Nathan, thank you. I sold a sport coat to the man that you sent in the other day. It was a good customer. Thank you very much. And my father would say, my pleasure. Customers like this, you can have them. Now, there was nothing wrong with this customer, except that he knew exactly what he wanted. So it was a crime if you knew exactly what you wanted. It was a crime if you didn't know. Everything was a reason to be thrown out of Birke's. It's really a miracle people got in.
I wasn't in love. I don't know if he was in love, but it was a convenient thing. And then it grew into love. When you get married and you have kids and you get used to each other. But I didn't look at him as my husband because I went out in Poland, I had a boyfriend. But I just was going to go for a couple of weeks.
Most of the city, whomever I came in contact would say, Bernice, how do you get to go into Mr. Birke's? I'd say, why? You open the door and you walk in. No, I was just thrown out yesterday. He asked me what I wanted, and I said I was browsing. He said, no browsing in the store. Leave now.
My father was an amazing talker and a less than adequate listener. So if you agreed with him, he was very congenial and enjoyed the conversation.
You could speak, only if you agreed.
The second you had an opinion that differed from his about religion or politics or virtually anything,
You were shut off like a phonograph player. The needle was taken out and you were listening to Mr. Birke.
he would find whatever was your Achilles heel that he knew about you and go for it. How could you know anything? You still have a mortgage, if he knew that was, upsetting to you. Or how could you know you didn't finish school? Or just whatever was going to unravel your self-esteem.
Like it or not, when he got all through, he said, you like that story? If you didn't like it, go home.
If that didn't work, he left the room.
But you came back every turn.
It wasn't a tragedy to marry somebody because that's how everybody got married over there. Most couples, when they were going to go to Siberia, there was a rabbi and he had won a wedding ring. And people used to stay in the line to get married. So with the wedding ring, he used to give the ksiba and the old thing, give the wedding ring, you put it on your husband and wife, and give me back the wedding ring, and somebody else came.
And you got married in one of these group situations.
Right.
How many other couples?
100, 200.
Really?
Yeah, there was a line, like from here to outside, like Las Vegas. I saw a picture in Las Vegas. They come in and they take the license and they're married. That's how it was in Europe.
My mother couldn't handle the fact that I was single. Single meant unhappy to her. And even though I told her that I was fine and I made jokes about the fact that, I single might have been better off than she married, given the kind of marriage that and difficulties that they had, she didn't buy it.
It's a survival instinct. And we were probably used to that because the marriages weren't like over here. It was matchmaking marriages, a lot, 90%. I didn't care who my kids married because I figure I wouldn't want them to go through what I went through. Just because I'm Jewish, I have to have no mother and no father and no brother and no sister, no everybody. So I think if I would have a chance, I would convert myself right after.
What do you mean by that?
I would become non-Jewish
Right after the Holocaust?
right after the Holocaust. I says, if I would be non-Jewish, I would have everybody.
In the late 60s, I had 4 kids and a lot of clothes to buy, and the best place to get a good bargain was Birke's in downtown Lowell. So one day I brought one of my kids in, and I asked Nathan, "How are you today?" And he proceeded to say, "Shitty." My daughter was horrified and shocked and wanted to leave right away, but she ended up with her Calvin Klein jeans, and that made up for all the insults.
I know when my son went to college, he came in one day with a jacket, a houndstooth jacket. His roommate said, "Gee, it's like mine." He took it off and looked for the label. And my son said, "You know, where my mother buys the clothes, they don't like labels." So we cut them out.
I bought a Harris Tweed sport coat from him one time, and it was a really nice jacket. I think it was only about $50, and this isn't that long ago. And of course, half the time there'd be no labels in them because he'd get it before the labels, it'd be production overruns. And it was funny. So, "You want a label?" You opened up the drawer, and he had about 50 of the Harris Tweed labels, and he handed me one.
And I think Nathan felt that if labels were important, they'd be on the outside of the clothes. Who's going to see the label, after all, unless somebody's looking in your closet? They shouldn't be in your closet. Don't worry from the labels.
We were in Russia, and people used to fall, dying. They didn't have enough to eat. So you just walk by them. It was a big wagon, and pick up all the dead people and put them in a wagon, and then brought them over and put them in one big grave and cover them. So you saw so much trouble that you lived with it. Well, my first son was 9 months old, so I was going to change his diaper, and there was a little small light with kerosene, and he grabbed it and he threw it on himself. Well, all he did is had a burn on his chest. We rushed him to the hospital, and they didn't even have an aspirin. So when they went down, he says, "Nate, the people know him." He says, "Go to the black market, see if you can get something that we can bring the fever down." You couldn't find an aspirin. So they did it years ago. They never put cold water on it. They just let it go. They didn't know. And he got an infection and he died. But over there was so normal. The death was so normal, like nothing. So if you tell anybody that your kid died, he says, "Well, what? My 2 kids died." It was nothing. It was just like they didn't have any medicine at all. If the kid was really strong, he could survive. I think I was only 20 years old, 21, and I think you can take it much better than when you're older. Then 2 years later, I had another baby. And that baby was born with a broken... When they delivered the baby, I guess, they didn't deliver them right, and they broke the spinal cord, and he couldn't hold his head. I didn't know how to face Nathan when he's going to come back, and I'm going to say, "You lost your second child." And he came back, and we told him, and I says, "I'll never have any more kids. I don't want to have any more kids. If I have to have them and bury them, I don't want to have any more kids." We told him, and I says, "I don't want to have any more kids." I had a little Jewish cemetery.
Another sale at Birke's.
Okay. If I have to have them and bury them, I says, "I'll never have any more kids." She?
The radius work up blackbirds.
Okay, we'll try them and see what we can do for you. If not, we'll find you a nice suit, a double-breasted suit.
I used to go shopping, clothing shopping, with my father. I mean, go to the factories in New Bedford and New York and Fall River and Boston and Lawrence. And this one time, my father and I went, and we always stopped to eat, of course, because it was a long day. And we were at this very nice restaurant compared to most of the diners that we'd stopped in. And my father finished well before I did. And he pushed his plate sort of for the waitress to take it away. And something about that embarrassed me, because now I was sitting here kind of eating alone, even though, and I don't know what it was about that embarrassed me, but it did. And I kept saying, will you keep your plate in front of you? And he was like insistent, and we had this sort of weird power struggle. But he got rid of that plate really quickly, and I was irritated. When we got back into the car and we're driving along, I asked him, well, I sort of said, that really bothered me, and I don't know why you couldn't have just left the plate in front of you, and blah, blah, blah. He ended up pulling off the road. I was very young. And he said, when I looked at the plate, all I could see was blood. And then all I could think of was my family, and I had to get rid of the plate.
In 1945, when the war finished, I came to Poland. They had a list who was living, so I didn't see any of mine. We lived on the bottom floor, and my father made a beautiful, like my cabinet, but big. We were 6 people, and he had one closet like a whole wall, and he made it carved and everything. I went out and I said to the janitor, who lives there? He says, well, not your parents. Somebody else is living there. So I looked in through the window because we were on the bottom floor and the cabinet was still there. Well, I didn't know what to do. I figure if I go in, I'll probably take a stone and break the cabinet and break the whole thing off. So Nathan says, let's go. And we didn't stay there for 24 hours.
My coat, my suit that I wore for my wedding came from here. Now for $20, we can go back to Woodstock. This is Woodstock generation stuff here. This is definitely left over from the 70s.
My parents didn't get rid of anything. They didn't get rid of anything at home. They didn't get rid of anything at the store. We call all of the stock that didn't sell at the end of the regular season that was brought upstairs for storage, the bones.
When we moved to Market Street, we still moved the old bones. And people used to say to him, what are you keeping that old thing? He says, some people eat chicken and throw out the bones. I don't throw out the bones.
Recently, a couple of guys, whom I call the Bones guys, Steve and Louie, are in Birke's arranging to sell the bones to various places in the country and maybe in the world. And in particular, I know they have an arrangement with a person who's called the King of Vintage in a store called Reminiscence in New York City.
In Jewish they say intish the shira. You have to see it. The intish the shira means you have to see the consequences. Just talk until you see the money doesn't mean anything. They think they hit a gold mine.
The minute I walked in the store and we took our first tour, which I have on videotape, it was, I knew we hit a gold mine. I knew the stuff was extremely high.
He says, we sell old stuff. Have you got any old stuff? I says, yeah, I have some.
As soon as I found this place, I quit my job. I was like, that's it, I'm just going to do this. And I knew we were in a timely situation. I did my research. I saw what was coming hot for fall. It was here, and you just don't know if it's going to be around next year. I mean, there's just no time to waste, because last year the stuff wouldn't have been worth anything, and who knows if it's going to be worth anything next year. But this year, it's definitely hot, and we have to push it immediately. Don't!
No. Yeah, covering your face with your head shut.
Lou? Oh, good.
has that vinylette feel. Nathan, who this was his store, was actually very brilliant. He knew that the fashions in New York and France were about 2 years ahead of Lowell. So what he'd do is wait a couple of seasons until the trend died, and then he would buy everything they had left for virtually nothing, bring it to Lowell, and it would be the height of fashion here, and he made a killing. Nathan was a really good buyer. He knew his business well. Madonna's dancers have vogued in our shoes, so we will sell all these people clothes, and you will start seeing it in rock videos. We even have bands already calling us and different stores, so yeah, it's quite the find. And we will dress everyone outrageously.
And I don't know, I hope they're right. I hope they know what they're talking about.
Can you imagine any other merchant in the world saying, what are you here to buy for?
Right.
You're set up in business to sell, and he doesn't want to sell.
That's right. He was the only one. It didn't care if he sells. He loved to buy and didn't care if he sells it or not. And he really overboard, but I guess he had to buy.
The fun in doing business, though, with him was always seeing who could beat who. He was a tough negotiator, you know what I mean? But you have to understand him. He knew when he got me to my limit, though. He knew when to back off, you know? But it took us a little time to understand and build that relationship.
Sala, you talk to him.
You talk.
After he was older, and he said, you talk to him. Yeah, I remember that. Oh, isn't it gorgeous? He made such a beautiful stuff. I made money on him. I can't complain.
You did. She admits it now. She was crying poverty every time she come down.
No, not really.
What do you
I
mean? Every
never
time you
cried
came,
poverty.
I never cried.
No.
I never won a battle with you. You used to make me feel guilty. I used to pay you to take the coats out. What are you talking about?
I used to say, Charlie, what are you doing to me? He said, okay, how much you want to Okay, I'll pick something. You want me to pick or you don't?
Why, you want to buy?
Yeah.
I'll be more than happy to say anything you want today. We
Okay.
get ready for inventory. You can buy anything you like.
Okay, I will.
This is what it is.
I like to take those, so I'll pick some stuff.
When you say some stuff, a couple hundred pieces, 150 pieces?
Maybe
or-
100 pieces.
Yeah, I'll ship it. I'll ship it on UPS.
You're going to give me a better price on the kids' coats, and I'll buy them all.
Excuse me.
You better go get Maggie.
Yeah.
I'm just teasing.
You're teasing.
My father used to just say, I'll take them all. How much? I'll take them all. I'll take this rack. I'll take the... Yeah, this looks good. This rack.
Is this mine?
Nope. Right to... It starts here.
Is that samples too?
You get 66 of the wools.
Yeah.
And I'll sell you the whole group at $20.
Okay.
No,
I'm
no,
not
the,
gonna-
tw-
I'm not
the other
gonna-
ones I'm charging you $3.
I know. And this is $3 too. What's this here?
That's how much money I just lost on the deal. All the wools, everything was $20.
Okay.
The
That's-
rest I put it in the other category at 50 of them for $3 a piece. So that you were very easy today.
I'm in a good mood.
I'm in a good mood.
I know.
I just come off of an illness, so I had no fighting power today.
Well, you give me a good price, and I didn't bother. I know it's a good price. That's it. One time he went into a guy, and he said to him, "Sell me dresses." He says, "I can't sell you dresses. Right after the war." He says, "We have our steady customers, and we have to supply them before you get." And he says, "I went through Hitler, and you're not going to sell me any dresses." He says, "I'll kill you." He was rough, and he wants to. After a while, they became the best friends because he could smooth them down. He says, "That's the only way you can open up a door." And that's how he opened up all his doors.
When I was 8 years old, I got 106 temperature, just spiked this temperature. And, they thought I was going to die and whatever. It was like this big fluky thing.
At that time, like any other old-time pediatricians, made house calls.
And the doctor, when he realized that the temp really was 106, started dialing an ambulance. And my father says, "Who are you calling?"
The Birkes didn't have a car, so I just said to him, well, I really should take this child and bring her right to the hospital, see if we can't get this fever down and treat her, and certainly make a diagnosis of what was caused of the fever. Of course, Mr. Birke was very upset and very excitable, as that was his nature.
My father just grabbed this guy by the shirt, and practically lifted him up and said, I just want you to know one thing. She dies, you die.
He said, well, if you don't get her better, I'll kill you. Fortunately, I got her better, and I'm still very much alive.
And that's how he was when any of us were seriously ill, and I'm sure it brought back for him losing his father, and then all of, his first 2 sons died in Russia, and then all of the Holocaust losses. So there was definitely this complexity about the man.
Mr. Birke, I think, was the first capitalist, anarchist / socialist that I ever met in my life. He knew that you needed to make money. He knew money was very important.
If someone came in and he didn't feel like selling to them, and they'd say, well, what, don't you want my money? He would look at them and say, I don't need your money. And he meant it.
He liked money, but he wouldn't sell himself for money.
Money wasn't important to get the necessities of life. He felt the necessities of life should be available for everyone. And then the money should be for how you made your own life special.
He was offered $1 million for his store about 10 years ago. Today the store is probably worth $125,000.
Somebody came in and says, Nathan, I can give you $1 million for your building. And he says, what am I going to do?
What am I going to do with $1 million?
What would I have done?
I can't eat it. I can't talk to people with $1 million.
So I had $1 million and have nothing. He said I'd be sitting at home.
I'm going to have $1 million and stay home?
In other words, what would he have done with his time? The store was his life. He went there from morning to night, 5 or 6 days a week, 7 during season, and that $1 million wasn't worth that to him.
That's probably my daughter.
Can I have the plate, sir?
Well, my mother had a relationship with many of her customers, and when she went to the factories, she would frequently, and my father too, would frequently be buying things with specific people in mind. So they'd see something and they'd say, oh, Nancy would love this would look wonderful on her, we'll get it for her. Anne would love this, the princess, actually, they didn't call her Anne, they called her the princess. The princess would love this.
I think that looks beautiful on you. That looks really beautiful on you.
For some reason, about 30 years ago when I came in, Nathan Birke did not throw me out. And he sat me down, and we chatted and we chatted. And at that time, he was carrying a line of children's clothes called Princess Anne, because, of course, Princess Anne was in the royal family. And from that day forward, I became known as Princess Anne.
Because, of course, they never knew people by their actual names. They were just dubbed these myriad and sundry things. There was the Greek, and there was the TV man, and there was Wojciech, who was actually this man Walter Wojciech, and there was...
Sally would get so that she would know exactly what kinds of things I would like, and when something would come in, she would say to Nathan, the princess would like this.
My mother and father would always say, oh, we're putting this aside for the princess, and, it wasn't we're putting this aside for Anne McDonough.
So they had a princess rack behind the counter, and when she'd get a new shipment of things in, I'd get the call to come down quick because she had some princess clothes for me.
When I saw that coat, I said, that looks like the princess. So that's why she was going to not buy it. I have a daughter-in-law who would look like good in that too, but
so what do you
first.
think?
No, I think it's beautiful. It is.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous.
Well, I think I'm going to take it home with me, Mrs. Birke.
I know.
It was always nice to walk through the door of Birke's and hear, oh, the princess is here. It must be a special day.
I had a good customer, very good clientele. I had him for 26 years. And honest to God, he never trusted anybody. He wanted to know. He would come over to the loudspeaker and say in the loudspeaker, says, Philomena, why don't you look in their bag, but that they got in their bag?
He was afraid that they're going to steal one and they're going to bring down only one. So he used to say, 2 coming down, Phil used to say.
I have 2 garments going downstairs. I have another garment going downstairs.
One is coming down.
Watch this lady going downstairs.
4 dresses are coming
One
down.
garment going downstairs.
That's how we knew what was what.
Papers of transit, papers related to immigration, papers, and there were always, papers, always papers, because my father spent his life finagling his way from one country to another country in amazing ways. I have to find this, but, whereas the employee is a professor of Talmud and rabbinical law having a reputable standing in his profession. I mean, it is true my father was all but ordained, but he never practiced his religion. If anything, he spent his time demeaning the religion, and certainly after the Holocaust was a rabid atheist. So to have this, the fact that he got into the U.S. on this particular kind of visa is hysterical.
As far as religion is concerned, I felt Mr. Birke was probably one of the most religious men I ever met.
He used to hate it. He used to hate religion. He says, if there is a God, it's a shitty one God. It's not a God. How could he see, not just Jews, to see people making ovens for people?
And again, it didn't matter what religion you were. He would do the identical thing. So he had nothing but disdain, because he would say, how could there be a God? How could a God let innocent children be shoved into ovens and be killed in front of their mothers? And would go on this tear of bringing the Holocaust so close to you that it was just completely ungluing.
This is probably in the late 1950s, when people really didn't want to talk too much about the Holocaust. Nathan Birke was very upset that there was no plaque in our synagogue commemorating the 6 million martyrs, the 6 million Jews killed during the Holocaust. And rather than write a letter to the editor or even speak to the rabbi or the trustees, he simply went out and purchased a plaque. They didn't have a subscription. He didn't ask for people to raise money. He went out and purchased a large bronze plaque, and it suddenly appeared one day. I'm not even sure that it had Nathan Birke's name on it. If it did, it was very small. But we all knew that it was Nathan Birke that did that, and I was impressed then, and I'm still impressed.
It was about 12 or 15 years ago. My father lost his leg. He was a bad diabetic, and he was at the Woburn Rehab. And it was ironic. I saw Nathan Birke there. And he was there for the same reason. He lost his leg also. And it was sad to see these two people like that. People like Nathan Birke they were fighters, they were workers, They'd work 20 hours a day and go back and do it again the next day. And he knew what it was to survive, and it was really sad to see them like that.
There was a period when, right after he had his leg amputated from a diabetic complication, that he was in a rehab center, and I came from Indiana to visit him, and we made this tape recording.
And I came to Poland. I went back to the place that we were living.
My father and I had come to a different kind of understanding, let's say, and there was a way in which at times he was able to be soft. When I was going through the absolute worst period of my life, my former husband had left. It was a messy situation. I was very seriously depressed. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. It was just a horrible period in my life. I got into this thing where I thought I should get breast implants. So this whole business with, thinking about breast implants really didn't fit with any image my father would have had of me or that I would have had of myself. One of the times that I was visiting, my father had a particularly hard time with the fact that I was losing more weight and all this stuff, and it ended up saying to me, Szif, what can we do? What can we do? I'll do anything to make you feel better, and, what do you think it would take? And I said, well, I think that I should get breast implants. And he looked at me and he said, what do you mean implants? And I said, I sort of explained real briefly to him. He says, okay, "You want new breasts? I'll buy you new breasts." It was like this great moment. I mean, in the midst of all this depression, even I cracked up, and he meant it. If at that moment I had said to him, "I need $5,000 for new breasts," and he thought that was going to make me feel better, he would have found $5,000 for new breasts, even though he was a person the next day who was going to buy day-old bread.
I have to confess that I didn't know that Sally and Nathan were married until I was probably in high school. It just never occurred to me. It just didn't click. I called him Mr. Birke, and I called her Mrs. Birke, but I wasn't sure about the relationship. And I knew the kids. I knew that there were children there, but somehow it just didn't seem right. Here we had a woman who always, when I brought my clothes up, she would always add up the prices on the clothes and then say, "And I'll take a little off."
Black matches with white. He was the black and I was the white. When people used to come in and he used to get mad at them, I says, "Nathan, quiet. I'll do the selling, you do the buying." So we made a good team. So he used to be rough to the people. He used to take that out on my customers. So I used to say, "Nathan, wait a minute." I used to feed him. So his mouth was busy eating instead of insulting people. A lot of times he used to say to me, "I think you give me the diabetes because you affect me too much." I says, "No, you got it yourself." He used to love to eat. We went in one time in a shirt factory, and a guy, 92 years old, was sitting down, the original owner. The kids took it over, and I think the grandchildren got it. So he was sitting down, and Nathan went over and he says to him, "What are you doing? Why aren't you in Florida?" He says, "This is my Florida." He says, "I don't like Florida." He says, "How old are you?" He says, 92. And that was his life. And that was Nathan's life. Nathan had always somebody to talk to. Nathan had always something to do in the store. And he wasn't bored. That store kept him alive. And people used to say, "When are you going to retire?" He says, "I'm going to die in the chair." And that's what he did. He died in the chair. 2 days he was in the hospital and he died. Till the last minute, he had a good life.
He would ask people on a very regular basis for the last, I'd say, decade of his life, "Would you like to come to my barbecue party?" And they would say, "Oh, when is it, Nathan?" He'd say, "I don't know." He said, "But someday it'll be." And they would learn soon after he was talking about his cremation.
When he died, he was mean. He was sometimes very mean. I used to say to him, "Nathan, I don't want anything of you, but I wish you'd give me a little of your brain." That's the only thing I said. "I don't care how much money you got and how much did. All I want is a little piece of your brain."
My mother wasn't sure what to do about the ashes, so they sit in this urn in her living room. And again, Jews aren't supposed to do that. You're not supposed to have any remains of the dead. So she has this friend who is a survivor, who was in Auschwitz, and he won't come into the house anymore. She has to meet him out because he says to her, "Is Nathan still there?" It's like this funny joke. "Is Nathan still there?" She says, "Yeah, he's still here." And he says, "Okay, well then."
Any more of me? I'm enough for them. I'm going to be
camera shy.
Yeah, no, it's been a week and he's taking still pictures of me. Oh, that's enough.
we done?
Have your coffee.